Democratic leaders respond with a manufactured response to Trump's address. The new president of Planned Parenthood states abortion is their core mission. Lastly, former Facebook employees state company is like a cult. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. So shortly after a moving address from President Trump, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer appeared behind a podium staring into the camera with indignation covering their faces. What was supposed to be a rebuttal proved to be anything but that. Right out of the gate, Nancy Pelosi attempts to fool the American people by claiming Trump's address was full of malice and misinformation while providing not one example to support her claim. Then attempting to emotionally win over America by saying government employees are not being paid, when in reality, those who haven't received pay during the shutdown will be reimbursed every dime once the government reopens. And all it takes to reopen the government is for the Democrats to approve less than a tenth of a percent of the federal budget to be allocated to building a wall. That's all it will take. So in their initial address, their initial point made, Democrats show they care more about bureaucracy than you or I. Not one life has been taken by the government shutdown, whereas tens of thousands of lives have been taken by illegal immigration. Any decent human being would conclude illegal immigration is a much more serious problem than a government shutdown. Because unlike those workers who will not receive any pay for the time being, but they'll be compensated, the same cannot be said for those who have lost a loved one to illegal immigration. You can't replace a loved one. You just can't do that. But that doesn't seem to matter. I just find it pretty ironic that the Democrats are the ones who claim if banning a gun saves even one life, then it's worth it. My question is, why wouldn't you apply that same logic to illegal immigration? And probably the only answer you'll come up with is votes. That's the difference between banning an assault rifle to save one life and curtailing illegal immigration to save another. If they say they're going to ban assault rifles to save a life, they win a vote. If they do nothing to curtail illegal immigration, they win a vote. Either way, it's a win-win for them to only apply that logic where it suits best. Basically meaning they don't care. They don't care about you and I. They just want to stay in power. So, really, they brought no new arguments to the table. Instead, they decided to stick to the script by peddling nonsense that Trump is holding the American people hostage because of a government shutdown. I mean, are you serious? This is really your argument here. But I can't say I'm surprised that all they did was attack Trump's character rather than the points he made. In Trump's address, he informed the American people that illegal immigrants negatively affect communities that are typically made up of minorities. And those minority groups are the groups the Democrats claim to fight for, but do nothing to curtail legal immigration. And not one response was made by the mainstream media or Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to address that issue right there. Not one. Not one. That was the whole purpose of their airtime, was to rebut what President Trump said, because it was going to be filled with misinformation. Well, that isn't misinformation. That's the truth. Another point Trump made that no one responded to was how he called out politicians who are against the wall but live in a home that's surrounded by a wall. Not one person responded on that as well. And it's a shame that anybody would even want to combat what Trump said last night. Because at the end of the day, it was a pro-American speech. And the response to it was anti-American. I mean, how can you argue that having a wall to protect your country is immoral when people are literally dying in part because of our inability to better secure the border? Now, of course, someone can make the argument that Americans kill Americans all the time. And fair enough. But there's a key distinction between the two, and that is, we don't choose who's being born in America, but we can choose who migrates here. And since it's the elected officials' job to protect their citizens and their country above all else, it would seem to be the moral thing to properly secure the border with a wall. Then again, when it comes to the Democrats' view of what's moral and immoral, we have to realize this is the same party that will call a border wall immoral and abortion moral in the same sentence without even cracking a smile. Which leads us to Planned Parenthood's new president, Leanne Wynn's tweet that proves the organization is nothing more than a glorified abortion center. Her tweet stems from a BuzzFeed article titled, Planned Parenthood's new president wants to focus on non-abortion health care. Wynn didn't seem to like that title too much, which explains why she tweeted the following. I am always happy to do interviews, but these headlines completely misconstrued my vision for Planned Parenthood. Now, this might make you wonder, since we're constantly told Planned Parenthood is there to provide medical care, then how does that make non-abortion health care irrelevant to the organization's main focus? Well, within 2 minutes, we had an answer to that question. She tweeted out the following. First, our core mission is providing, protecting, and expanding access to abortion and reproductive health care. We will never back down from that fight. It's a fundamental human right, and women's lives are at stake. Okay, so let me get this straight. It's a fundamental right to decide whether a person has a right to live based on their potential inconveniences that they may put on your life? Essentially, what this implies is that if an unexpected person comes into your life that may bring any unwanted consequences, you have the fundamental right as a human to kill that person, so long as they are unconsciously aware of what's going on. And the second part, where she claims women's lives are at stake, I want to know, how does she figure? How do you come to that conclusion? How are women's lives truly at stake? And if your argument is that every woman who receives an abortion is in a life or death situation, well then, you are being completely dishonest about the facts. Because in reality, only 3% of women have abortions for health reasons. And only 1% of women have abortions due to rape or incest. With there being roughly 1.3 million people getting abortions every year, that means only 13,000 of those seeking abortion are due to rape or incest. And only 39,000 of abortions that are performed are due to health reasons. That means 1,248,000 people get abortions every year for selfish reasons. That's it. Therefore making it a new form of birth control. And this murderous form of birth control is sponsored by the state, meaning you and I, the taxpayers, are paying for the death of over 1 million unborn children every year. Yet, this has received no media attention because it doesn't fit the false narrative being force-fed to us by our schools and news stations across the country. You can be for women's rights and against abortion at the same time. They are not remotely related. One has to do with empowering individuals, while the other is disregarding individuals entirely. Now, abortion isn't the only thing that is doing away with the idea of individuality. But Facebook is doing this as well. In a recent article written by CNNBC, more than a dozen former Facebook employees came out and compared the company to a cult. The issue at hand is that Facebook wants a monolithic culture which forces employees to pretend to love their job and the company no matter what. Although you won't realize the company's downfalls by simply visiting the facility, because as one employee states, there's a real culture of even if you are effing miserable, you need to act like you love the place. Much like the circle, in my opinion, employees state that they're pressured to put the company above everything else in their lives. Now, it's odd to hear such criticism from a company that was just ranked number one, the best place to work. Out of every other company in the world, Facebook was ranked number one on Glassdoor. But it's important to note that they have since dropped to number 7. And it might have to do with their top-down approach, which a lot of employees dislike. And one employee had even stated the following: what comes with scale and large operations is that you can't afford to have too many individual voices. And I can see that, because if everybody's off doing their own thing, then you don't have a company. It isn't Facebook. It's just a incubator for other people to do their own pet projects, essentially. So you do need to have some form of culture to allow the company to thrive. I get that. And the thing that I don't get and I don't agree with is the way they ensure their employees are not gaining too much individuality in the workplace. And that's by their peer review system they have set up, which allows everyone to rank everyone else, essentially making it a popularity contest. And to be on the top, you have to be the best cog in the machine, so to speak. And I think it's important to add that as we keep advancing, we have to be aware that this can affect us, the general public, not just those who are working for these big tech companies, but it can affect us as well. Because if we look over at China, that has a social credit system and it's used in a very oppressive way, it doesn't seem unlikely that that can slowly trickle down into the general public here in America in a more democratic form, such as everybody gets to rank everybody, and creating a mob rule that is almost impossible to stop. So there's already evidence that this is taking place with other social media sites like Twitter, who has unapologetically banned people for having an unpopular opinion. We see it all the time that they do it with conservatives. So I think it's safe to say we are living in a time where individuality is under constant threat, and we have to be vigilant in defending it. We have to be. There are moves slowly being made to chip away at the First Amendment. And it all starts with the political correctness. That was the building block to take us to hate speech. Where will we go from hate speech? I don't know. But it's nowhere good. And that's why we need to work to stop that. Because these companies have a lot of power. I'm all for private enterprise. But there needs to be a limit to how much control they can have over the general public. And with certain regulations, it allows them to grow even stronger. One of the biggest ones that allows Facebook to continue to grow with little to no competition was the net neutrality. Now, with it being dismantled, it allows other companies to actually put up a fight, or at least try to compete against Facebook, or Amazon, or Google. So I think President Trump will do the right thing when it comes to breaking up these monopolies that are taking place and sort of mitigating the power they have over the general public. Maybe he won't, but I hope he does. I believe he will, simply based on what he has done already as far as addressing the issues with Google and Dragonfly, which was the search engine being used over in China to monitor everything you do. And Google also came out with a good censorship program that Breitbart was one of the only news sites to get. So he's addressing these issues in a very direct manner, which may not work too well for him, since it can be taken as political partisanship, when in reality, conservative groups and basically any kind of Republican is looked at in a negative way through the social media scope. So we need to be very aware of what's taking place, is what I'm getting at. We have employees from Facebook saying that it is a monolithic culture, and it's not good, it's not healthy. So that's the news for today. I hope you all enjoy it, and we'll see you again tomorrow.